13 Questions by Mantranscending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
Welcome back to the 13 Questions podcast. I, Adam, am going to be your host for this episode. We're going to be interviewing John Brisson. For those of you who aren't aware, John Brisson runs a website called fixyourgut.com. He also wrote a book called Fix Your Gut, The Definitive Guide to Digestive Disorders. John has worked in the past with supplementation companies as an educator and collaborator for product information. He's also worked as a coach. I know he's logged tens of thousands of hours with people, coaching them. Personally, my fiance has had coaching. I know Darren's done some coaching. Really, really knowledgeable guy, especially if you suspect that you have a digestive disorder. He also has a really great supplementation guide. It's free on his website. I implore you to go check that out. The guy has a giant heart and he really wants to help people. And I'm really excited to be able to present you with this interview. Aside from John being a personal friend of mine, this podcast, he's really, really introspective. Talks a lot about his family, a lot of the things that defined who he is. And even more so, the second half of this podcast is almost as long as the first. This is actually, I think, our longest one we're doing. The first half is an hour long, and the second one is like 56 minutes long. So a lot of value for value here. I hope you guys do enjoy. If you want to learn more about John, fixyourgut.com. And if you'd like to know more about John after you listen to this interview, you can, of course, go to 13questionspodcast.com, subscribe, become a member, and you'll get instant access to the bonus questions. And in fact, you're not just going to get the bonus questions, you're going to get the RSS feed, which is going to give you both of them put together, so it's not having to listen to one podcast, another. Then you're also going to get access to the 13 Questions podcast members portion of the website. We've got community forums over there. There's a section where you can sign up for doing prompted journaling courses for self-prompted journaling writing for self-improvement. You're also going to get access to over $200 in communications courses by TJ Walker. And you also get the ability to, if there's somebody in your life, somebody that you know, somebody that you want to hear answer these questions, you also get the ability to plug into our system and record your grandpa, record your father, record a mentor, a friend, somebody that meant something to you or just sees the world in a way that answering these questions, I don't know, helps light your path differently. I don't know. You guys know what I'm saying, but you get the option to do that. And if the quality is good and sounds fine, we're going to go ahead and put it into the feed right here alongside the regular episodes. So far, Stevie submitted an episode. Fantastic. Thank you, buddy. And I'd like to hear more from you. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening, and enjoy the show. All right, today we have John Brisson here to answer 13 questions. We're going to jump through the first 13 insightful questions here, then go into the bonus round, and then maybe chat about the process a little bit. All right, John, you've read the questions over. Are you ready to dive on in?
Let's do it, Adam.
Sweet. What was the best advice ever given to you? Would you modify it today?
When I lost my son years ago, my grandfather told me, this too shall pass. And he told me the story about King David and how he lost his son and mourned him up to the point that, his son had passed. And then after that, King David was, relieved, and everybody was asking him, shouldn't you be mourning the death of your son? And, King David was like, well, no, he's up with God. The tough part is past about that. So, I mean, to me, that's the best advice. I mean, I've been sick throughout my whole entire life. I lost both my parents when I was young. I lost my son, Abel. And usually people say that nothing else will ever happen to you. After you've had bad things have happened into your life at certain stages, that nothing else, most people say nothing else will ever top any of that. Like when I lost my mom, and then I lost my dad, and then I lost a child,
Mhm.
but that's the thing is through it all, you still have to be steadfast. You still have to get up in the morning because the world still turns. You still have people who depend on you. I remember doctors were trying to give me antidepressants after Abel had passed away, and me being more in the naturopathic side of things, I definitely declined them. But I was thinking it was the same advice that when I was talking to my grandpa about everything that will pass, because he lost his wife of 50 years, my grandmother, a couple of years before back, and they asked him the same thing. And I'm not, going against anybody who chooses to use antidepressants for times of grief. It's a personal choice, but I thought maybe there's a reason why I am grieving, and maybe there's a reason why I should feel a little bit depressed and I should feel the way that I do. And trying to block that or trying to change that chemically might have a negative effect on the grieving process. And for me, I took my grandpa's advice to heart, and I'm not going to say that it ever, gets any easier. But it did pass, and I am able to, work every day with helping people and trying to help my family and take care of my kids and being there for my wife. So in the end, in a way, it did pass, Adam. And a lot of people attribute that actually part to the Bible, that this too shall pass. It's not in the Bible. It's actually an ancient, kind of like an ancient wisdom. Some people say it may have been given down by Solomon, but yeah, I think to me that's the best advice. No matter what you're going through, don't give up. There is something on the other side. It isn't always rainbows, or it isn't always something better, but there is something on the other side.
Fantastic. What was the most important lesson you learned from your parents?
My dad, he told me not to trust the government.
Sounds like a wise man.
Yeah, and I wish he was alive today for me to tell him that he was right. I mean, when I was a teenager, I was a neoconservative. I loved George W. Bush. I was for the war in Iraq and the wars in Afghanistan. I used to listen to Sean Hannity on a daily basis. And how far I've come now to learn that all of that was a crock of crap. And how our government really is. And I remember my dad, I used to watch X-Files with him as a teenager, and he used to tell me how corrupt the Bushes were. And even though he was a little bit left, and he did kind of like some of the things that Bill Clinton had did as far as the economy is concerned, he still didn't trust Clinton, and he never voted for anybody for years and everything. And I actually found an old grammar book that he had as a college student that my grandparents had given him and a copy to my uncle. And inside of it had OSS equals CIA. And I found that very interesting. So I always knew my dad as being someone who always bucked the system. C.S. Joseph, who's a good personal friend of mine, said that he is a mentor. He is an ENFJ, so I could definitely see that. He was life of the party. He was even somewhat of an activist. And he even had friends who were Black Panthers. So, my dad, he was right. I wish I could tell him that we should not trust the government. We should not put our trust in any large institution, because in the end, they will fail us.
Do you think any of that rubbed off on you when you were a kid? As you get older, you kind of realize that you are your father or your mother, that he instilled that in you anyway?
I think he did. And I didn't realize it until I woke up, even though I hate using that term. But I didn't realize it until then. I didn't realize that the way I look in the world, did form a lot from how he looked at it. And I just never realized it. My grandfather was who I took a lot of my political beliefs from, because my grandfather was the opposite of my dad. He was a neoconservative. But even later in life, he started to realize that the wars were a giant mistake and everything, and started, turning his back on, the conservative and Republican Party and everything. So, yeah, you might be right, Adam. He might have rubbed off on me, and I didn't realize it until I found out the truth years later.
What book has been most influential on your life, and why?
See, this was a tough question because I've read I've read a lot of books.
You can pick more than one. It's okay.
I guess fiction-wise, Life Expectancy by Dean Koontz. It was the first, one of the first Dean Koontz books I've ever read. I know a lot of people are into Stephen King. I myself can't stand Stephen King. I think he's too dark in the way that he looks at the world, where Dean Koontz is a little bit more on the lighter side with still being realistic that everything is screwed. But I like Life Expectancy. Not to, I guess if anybody wants to listen to the book, skip for the next minute or two ahead. I want to drop some spoilers, but the main protagonist, before his grandfather died, his grandfather gave him 5 dates that were going to be the worst dates in his entire life. But he did not know what those dates were going to entail and how bad they would be. And through that, some of the worst dates, like one time he got trapped in a library, and in that he met his wife. Even out of tragedy, sometimes good things can happen. And at the end of the book, he ends up having a son, and it's the reverse for him. He'll have 5 good days in his life. And I wonder what those good days were due, because there was no follow up to the book. But yeah, I mean, I guess it influenced me because that's so true. Out of tragedy comes hope for many people. And it's even, the days that you think may be the worst days of your life, some good can come from that. And I mean, there's other books, 1984, Catcher in the Rye, which I know is an MK Ultra instruction manual, but first time I read it, I didn't understand it in high school, but later reading it as a young adult, I realized that Holden Caulfield was against the man. I also realized how they use it as a way to brainwash people. I mean, there's so many books, Adam. I could be here forever just talking about them. But yeah, I mean, Life Expectancy, if anybody, I definitely recommend reading Dark Rivers of the Heart, another Dean Koontz book. It pretty much sums up the world order of how it is now, and the corporatocracy and technology and space-based weaponry and everything. It's a very good book, too.
Great. You can grow Darren's bookshelf.
Yeah, that is one good thing about Darren. One him thing we do have really good in common is Darren does love to read, and I do too. Even though I didn't read a lot except for school until I met my wife. My wife gave me the love of reading.
Oh, how sweet.
And she read constantly. I never really read outside of school and video game magazines growing up as a child and as a teenager. And because of her, I learned how to love reading, and I've been reading ever since.
What daily habits or rituals do you have, and do you recommend them for others?
I try to maintain a strict circadian rhythm. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm always able to do it. The circadian rhythm is kind of like the biological clock, simply put. And it runs on about a 24.5 hour schedule, give or take, depending on the person. So I try to get sunlight every day, as long as it's not, rainy outside. I try to go outside and get some sun. I try to get outside when I first wake up in the morning around 7 to 8 a.m. To try to get some sun on my face and to just, my eye, what they call the eye clock, so that dopamine will start being produced naturally through blue light exposure from the sun. And then I try to eat 3 meals a day. I try to eat them within daylight. I try not to eat a snack after the sun has gone down. It's difficult sometimes. I'm human, but I do my best to do so. I try to get midday sun for vitamin D, especially during the summer when you can't get vitamin D during the winter. I can't, but I still try to get some sun midday. And I go to bed usually around the same time, around 11 or 12 p.m., sometimes earlier if I can. And I go to sleep in complete darkness because darkness is important for the production of melatonin. So I usually try to pick a good, ritual as far as trying to follow the natural circadian rhythm that we would have had before our modern life gave us so many light sources that may be bad for our health. And yes, I would recommend it very much so.
And that's crazy too, because even then the old light that you were exposed to is a flame. It was a very red, completely different wavelength of light. Falling asleep next to the fire is not your neighbor's porch light.
Adam, so you do know a little bit about natural light. Yes,
After talking to you before, I went and got myself a really high quality eye mask that blocks out, because I always keep my windows open, save on air conditioning bills or in the winter, and it's really nice. But my neighbors across the street have a really bright porch light, so it floods the bedroom with just a light haze. And it's funny because even though I don't perceptively see it with my eyes closed, it makes a difference in my sleep. Put the eye mask on, I sleep much better.
Yeah, some people who have polymorphisms or mutations in their clock genes are more sensitive to light than others. And there's actually studies too that the skin is actually sensitive to light too as well, depending on the person.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's what my second book, Fix Your Mitochondria, is going to be about. Hopefully it'll be out this year. But a lot of it has to do with circadian rhythm. And yes, I recommend everybody try their best to follow a good circadian rhythm. I understand in our modern world it's difficult to follow perfectly. I don't. But I do my best to try to live by that set schedule that I give. Sometimes I may work later than I should. Might have to record a podcast late. But overall, I do try to stick to that above all, mostly everything else, just because it has such an effect on our health. That's why third shift workers that work third shift have greater chances of cancer, greater chances for chronic disease and conditions, because they produce less melatonin and they override the natural circadian rhythm that God gave us.
Yeah, I think it's an increase in all-cause mortality across the board, pretty much.
Very much so. And there are ways that you can hack it, by sleeping in darkness when you come home and everything. But still, nonetheless, I mean, our body follows an internal clock, and, some external cues do have factors in it as well. The liver, for example, starts to shrink during the night because it's having to produce less bile, so you're having to digest less food. It's having to possess less toxin, and that's when it heals and everything. And if you eat, it delays at night when it's dark, it delays the time that the liver is able to shrink and is able to regenerate. So yeah, definitely, look at a circadian rhythm. I got some blogs on fixyourgut.com. Jack Cruz has done a lot of great work on circadian rhythm. Definitely, look into it. And that's one of the easiest hacks that most people could do for their health for free. It doesn't cost any money.
What do you think about like a second sleep, or where somebody wakes up in the middle of the night for a few hours and then goes back to bed?
There is a differing opinion of anthropologically if that's ever happened.
Okay. I'd always heard that, so I was just curious if that was a natural thing.
There's different people that say it is, and there's different people that say that's not the case. I know for myself, by getting sun and going to a more circadian rhythm, that doesn't happen, that I sleep the whole entire night through. I don't know. I mean, there's some people say it's better, some people say it's not. I guess time would tell. My guess is that ancient man usually probably had some people work third shift to be lookout. And I think most people probably, by and large, slept the whole night. But I could be wrong. But it's, at least from my own research, that seems to be what's most important.
Awesome.
I guess.
If I were to ask your best friend, what is the one thing they would say you need to work on the most, and why?
The same thing that Jay Dyer said, my arrogancy. I definitely empathize with Jay. I myself can be arrogant. I know I can. I try to work on it. It comes at a cost. I mean, part of me, like I always say this, and this is very unbecoming, but I'm still going to say it. I have a few short list of people that I'm going to call, that if the veil ever fails, let's say that the government collapses, and I'm going to call, I'm going to be like, I was right and you were wrong. And I know that's wrong. Yeshua taught us to love your neighbors as you love yourself. But I mean, sometimes you get so upset that people can be so blind and they want to trust the plan, that if it ever does happen, you just want to be like, I told you so. And that's arrogancy. And yeah, you had CSJ on, and we do know that ego is important to some degree, and that the New World Order wants to destroy ego. On both sides, you see a lot of people in the truther community talk about, self-love and love and light and destroying the ego. Well, the ego does exist for self-preservation. The primary personality exists for self-preservation. I'm not saying it's optimal to always be that way. I mean, if you follow by the four sides of the mind, CSJ's work, I'll shift to be more of a supporter. I think ESFJ is my second side of my mind. And that's what I usually go to help people. And that side of my mind feels bad that the INTP, or the primary, the ego, is arrogant. So yes, I do feel bad about it, and I do try to work against it. But sometimes arrogancy does serve a purpose.
Well,
it does serve a purpose to tell people, hey, I know what the heck I'm talking about. Listen to me.
Yeah, if you use it as a tool and don't unleash it all the time, then yeah, it's like anything else. It's useful and needed at times. It's why we have that skill in our lives.
And it does have problems too, because Lord knows the biggest thing with arrogancy, the biggest thing an arrogant person has to learn is it's okay to think that you're hot crap and think that you know your stuff. But you need to learn two things. One, you don't know everything. And two, when you're wrong, admit it. And I do. When I am wrong, whether it is in health stuff, and I have been wrong many times, or whether it's conspiracy stuff. For example, I used to be pro-Trump and now I'm anti-Trump. I used to be, trust a plan, not necessarily on the Q board, but, I used to like Trump and thought that he was our guy. And now, upon hours and hours of research and studying and all that, I've come to the conclusion that none of the presidents ever were. I admit it. I was wrong. And see, that's what a lot of arrogant people don't do, is they don't admit when they're wrong. And that's a problem.
What are you most curious about?
That's a great question. You would think health, but no, that's more work-based and me trying to help people. It's probably actually conspiracies, Adam. I spend majority of my time researching conspiracies. I'm most curious about it. I have to know the truth. And I've changed my opinions on a lot of things because of that. And I don't think I'll ever know. I don't think I'll ever get down to the bottom of it. I don't think we're designed to ever get down to the bottom of it. And if I do, then I'd probably be eliminated. But I mean, the world is not what we've told it is, and there are some objective truths, and I'll talk about that more later on some of the questions. But yeah, I'm curious about how far the rabbit hole goes. And I think a lot of people are who have listened to me over the years. But yeah, I think that's probably what I'm most curious about, is just trying to determine how dark the world really is and how much of we've been told is a lie. And I think about that a lot on a daily basis. And just like Jay Dyer talked about how he had to check himself and the knowledge that he has to come across and make sure that what he is, because you can doubt yourself. You really can. And curiosity does kill the cat. Sometimes I'm afraid that I'm going to be taken out one day because I got too curious. But I just say, I got to know, man. It's just, I want to know I want to know if I'm right. Because if I'm right, it proves a lot, I guess. I guess it proves that the world is a dark place and there is a higher power and there is a God. And, I'm always searching, kind of like Mulder. The truth is out there. And a lot of people nowadays, they're not curious. As much as I hate the NPC meme, and trust me, there's NPCs on the right and on the left. There are a lot of people out there that just go on what they're told. And instead of what Bill Cooper always said, is to research everything. And a lot of people don't do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of people just, their priorities are mismatched. It's not about survival. It's about clicks on a computer. Something that's not even existent, a fictional thing, a touch on a screen that ranks a point. It's almost like people are competing in a giant video game, and there can't be very many winners.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it makes me sad because I think that most people should do their to go after the truth. When did Alex Jones ever really go after the truth? When was he bought out? That's $1 billion question. When you're not bought out, do they kill you? Do they compromise you? I mean, I don't know, but that's one of the biggest problems are people. It's the love of self. I think there's too much self-love, which, a lot of people in both the conventional world and the conspiracy world, both put out that we need to love ourselves more. Actually, I think we love ourselves a little bit too much. I mean, look at Facebook. Look for the love of clicks, like you mentioned. Like, share, subscribe. I mean, yeah, I push for it to fix your gut. Everybody does. But I don't compromise in the truth. I don't share stuff because I'm afraid that people aren't going to like it. If it's what I think is the truth and it's what the data shows, and I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to spread it, and I don't care if people like it. Who cares? You got to look at the truth sometime, and so many people are not doing that.
Completely agree. What was the most embarrassing or humiliating experience of your life?
Years ago, I just had smoked some White Widow. I think it was about maybe 11 years ago. And back when I used to smoke marijuana, I've been completely straight edge ever since I got ill, ever since my first son was born. So it's been about 10 years. I don't even drink caffeine anymore. There was a guy who was in front of my car. I had a Jeep Grand Cherokee at the time, who wanted me to move so they could get out. And my father-in-law was behind me. And I got in the car and it was dark outside. And I just thought, I need to move the car, the Jeep, and completely forgot that my father-in-law's van was behind me. Of course, I was blitzed out of my mind. Okay. I was stoned, like completely stoned. And I backed into his van. I mean, I freaking just whammed the passenger side. And I come out and I go in there and I'm like, hey, Greg, I was moving to let Matt out, and I slammed into the passenger side of your van. And he wasn't mad. I mean, we ran it through insurance, and he eventually would get it fixed. But man, did I feel like a complete and utter tool.
Was that like the longest walk, having to go up there, going in?
Yes. I mean, I had only been dating Tiffany, my wife, maybe about a year or two at that point, which seems a long time. We've been together for 14 years now. I've been married to her for, probably about 7 years now. So I was just like, man, I am screwed, But actually, he laughed about it. And he thought it was funny. And, I guess it kind of is in a way, looking back on it now, but if anybody's out there listening, never drive impaired, even though I was just moving the car. I wasn't necessarily going through a drive. It was on my own property.
Well, at least it was only a vehicle and not a person.
True. But to this day, I still don't see how I was completely stoned to the point where I completely forgot. When any car behind me at all. But it was White Widow, so when you flick it, you see the THC, just come right off the hairs. So,
well, maybe it's one of those things like when you lose the remote and then it appears right next to you. It time slipped. It wasn't there, and you just pop back.
I think I was, just zoned in the moment. I had to move for my friend. I had, he needs to leave. I have to move. And then I was not thinking, and just as soon as I hit it,
you knew.
At first, even when I hit it, I was like, what the hell was that? And then I realized that I said, as soon as I got out of the car, I was like, fuck, man, what did I do? And then you got to take the walk of shame, and then you got to own up to it. And it's just, oh man, it was the most embarrassing thing that I could think of. And to this day, we still have a laugh about it. He'll bring it up sometimes, He'll be like, remember the time that you hit my van? And sometimes when he parks behind me now, he'll make a joke. He'll be like, hey, don't hit, if you're backing up or moving around me, don't hit my car. So I guess I gotta live with that for the rest of my life. But yeah, I guess it could be worse things to be embarrassed about. So,
What is your greatest fear, and how did you overcome it?
dying, but not like most people think that the fear of death or lack of knowing what the afterlife may be, and that I'm going to leave my kids
Mm-hmm.
because my parents died when I was young, and how much that affected me. And though my parents were very loving and everything, and it wasn't like I had other problems, it still affects a child when they lose a parent. And I haven't gotten over it. It's still my biggest fear. It still haunts me. It really bothers me. I, I I do my best to try to make sure that my kids know that I love them, and I do my best to try to be a good father. But it's still, I mean, my father was great. Even though he died when I was 18, I technically, I guess, wasn't a kid at that point. But I still miss him, and I still wish he was here. But I guess everybody does to a certain degree when they lose their parents. Even if they have a strenuous relationship with their parents, there's always going to be some sort of guilt or some sort of weird association with their death. And I do my best to try to prepare my kids, to let them know that stuff can happen, and my son gets it. He lost his brother. My daughter was too young. She was born after Abel had died. She doesn't really know. But it is my biggest fear is to leave them and them not knowing how much I truly love them and how much I truly want the best for them. Wow. And it does mess with me. And I don't know if I'll ever get over it. Heck, I don't even ever know if I'll get over it if they both, go to college and get married.
At least the one good thing is there's nothing you can do about it. So get over it or not, you're going to have to deal with it.
But that doesn't make it any easier, man. It doesn't. You're right. There's nothing I could do. When it's our time, it's our time. But it does mess with me. It's tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. What quality do you most admire in a man, and why?
Steadfastness. Being like a rock. I think that's lacking in a lot of men today. The men of old used to have that, like my grandfather, even my father to some degree, more than the modern snowflake. Even I have it, I mean, it's one of my redeeming qualities is that I'm here, I'm a rock, I can take it. And I think that's what men are supposed to be. We're supposed to be the rock for our families, for the people that around us that are closest to us. Not to say that you can't show emotion, not to say that you can't cry in front of people. I cry in front of, my kids or my wife when, times are very tough. That's not what being a rock is. Being a rock is that people could depend on you through times of great adversity, that people will know that you will be there for them, that people will know that you care for them. It's not, being emotionless. It's just, knowing that you will be able to weather any storm. And I think that is what's lacking a lot. And I think that's a lot what Darren is trying to do with Mantranscending, or men being accountable to one another. Because the more we're accountable, the more that we can be that rock, the more that we can be that rock for our family, the more that we can be pillars of our community. God made us to be this way. And I'm not going to say that women can't be either. There are a lot of strong women out there. There are a lot of strong single mothers. I'm not saying that at all. But men, from an anthropological standpoint, are supposed to be that rock. And many men are not that rock anymore.
Well, it's not something our society values. So you don't get as many people that just naturally have that endearing quality. But it's strange because in past times when things weren't so great, when we didn't have this structure and all these things to help us, where everybody had to survive, You buried your family members on your own. You tended the fields. You starved some seasons. If there wasn't a good crop, you might die. A harsh winter, you might run out of firewood. So many things that people today don't deal with, that stoicism, that being a rock in those days was more valuable than money. Money doesn't matter, when you have nothing and it's just you in the elements.
Yes, exactly. It's you being there against all odds, against the fall of man that happened from the Garden of Eden, of trying to provide for yourself and your family and for your community, and trying to fight against both nature and evil in itself. And you're right, we don't, as a society, we don't look at that as being admirable. In some ways, some people will say it's a form of toxic masculinity. And it's sad. It really is. Now, I'm not talking about not showing emotions. I'm not talking about that. It's just not giving up, out of all adversity, being there. And, that's one thing that my grandfather was. He may not have been the most loving person until they said when I was born, he kind of softened up a little bit. I always knew him, as he always told me he loved me. He was proud of me and everything. But that was one thing about my grandfather, was that no matter what I needed, he would give me his shirt off his back, and he could weather any storm. And that is something that I find extremely admirable.
Well, and it's amazing because you can look at somebody else and go, if they can do it, I can do it. If you don't have anybody else to look to that's stronger, that can handle anything, then how do you know? How do you know that a human can't? But when you have that person, especially if you respect them, it's everything.
Yes, very much so. Even if you don't have a positive role model in your life. And that's what, I'm a Christian. That's what we're supposed to do as Christians. People are supposed to look up to us as that, and I'm not saying I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. We'll never be Yeshua. But that's one of the main things that our society is lacking, is positive male role models that we can look up to, that are, strong, that they weather the storm, that they're steadfast, that they're loyal. And as men, we're not holding other men accountable for that anymore. And a lot of that is by design by the New World Order. They don't want us to come together. They don't want men to be able to, come together in groups and work out the world's problems. They want us to be divided. They want us to be at each other's throats. And I think that's a real problem.
Who are your role models?
That's a lot. I mean, first off, my grandfather and my dad, which I've talked about them at length. They're being very, honorable, loyal, men who are Christian. But outside of that, I have many role models. Gary Caradori, who was one of the private investigators for the Franklin cover-up, Franklin scandal. He lost his life for the truth. He believed the stories of Alicia Owen, Troy Bonner, when no one believed those kids, when no one believed that they were telling the truth. And so he went to go against the Goliath. He went to go against the evil, the darkness. If you're talking about on a physical level, the United States government, you're talking about a medical, physical level, Satan, the abyss, the darkness. And in doing so, he lost his life, and he tragically lost the life of his son in a tragic plane accident. They took him out and his son. They will not stoop. The New Order will not stoop. They will go as low as possible. There's anything that you could think that they will not do, they will. But yet, Gary Caradori sacrificed everything for the truth. And he is a hero for me because many, people like Alex Jones says that they sacrifice for the truth. Even Bill Cooper, with all his faults, Bill Cooper sacrificed when he was shot to death on his property. He sacrificed himself for the truth. And that's honorable. And I'm not saying that everybody died, the martyrs. If someone's made a martyr, that means that they were automatically our guy or they're automatically telling the truth. But usually it is a decent litmus test when you look at a person's body of work of how they've never compromised. Or if they did compromise, that eventually they started telling the truth and you could discern that, like Bill Cooper, for example. And how you don't give up in that truth once you have it. That's important. That's what's honorable. Even Yeshua himself, he sacrificed himself for that logos, for that truth. So that's why I think makes a hero in the end. Whether, there are many women who've done it too, is that a person above all fights for the truth. And many people don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And many people who claim that they do not. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm above selling out because I'm human. But I will say that I will do my best to always fight for the truth. And I think that's those people, even Gary Webb, who was driven to suicide, some people believe, or he may have committed suicide for his book, The Dark Alliance, and his work with the Mercury paper, and how he was ridiculed and he went through a divorce and everything. He was another man who fought for the truth. And those are the people that I admire, the people that struggled against great adversity to try to bring the truth to the masses.
They didn't stop no matter what the force against them was.
No. And yes, sometimes that does cost you your life. And sometimes the truth falls on deaf ears.
If there's more to this world than what really seems, if you're right about there being something spiritual behind the veil that we all have around us, then those things become really, really important and poignant.
Yes, and that falls back to if I'm right, if the FBI points a gun at me one day, and the world order is real, then that also means the esoteric side of it, the spiritual side, the fourth dimension, fifth dimension, whatever you want to call it, that's real too. That this is a spiritual battle. If it is, I know where I'm going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're on the right side, not necessarily on the right material side.
Yes.
What institution of society or structural aspect of modern life would you change given the chance?
The American Medical Association.
That was quick.
It's a crock of crap. I'm not even going to go conspiratorial on this one. I mean, as far as, most people think I would say the government or the CIA or the FBI. And yes, I have problems with all of those. But the American Medical Association has caused so many lies and the Rockefeller-funded medicine and the outdated methods that they teach. And I don't blame conventional medicine as in the doctor, because most of them don't know any better. And I'm not going to say that naturopathic or integrative medicine is perfect either. It has its flaws too, and it has its charlatans as well. But man, oh man, does the American Medical Association propagate whether it's that vaccines are 100% safe, whether it's majority of the medications that you take are 100% safe, whether it is instead of tackling chronic diseases and chronic conditions or autoimmune conditions at their core, like Mycobacterium avium paratuberculosis, which is a bacteria that is found in ruminant animals as the cause of ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease and possibly even Hashimoto's thyroiditis, has been known in the medical literature for 20 years. No, we're just going to give a person biological agents to handicap their immune system, and the disease will continue to progress, and they never will truly get better. That's what really, really makes me angry. The amount of money that is spent to the medical establishment beast and the AMA just sitting there knowing all this, but yet doing nothing, because that's how the system was designed since the Rockefellers poured their money in, and medical institutions were given, who was able to practice medicine, who was not able to practice medicine, from the Flexner report, Abraham Flexner. It's just disgusting. And it's not the individual doctors. It's not the individual researchers, which I know the FDA is separate from the AMA, but you can still lump them all together in their crimes. It's not the individual researcher for the drug company. It's not the individual pharmaceutical rep. It's the high up. It's, the Sackler family at Purdue Pharmaceutical, So yeah, I guess at the AMA, broadly put it up, the institution that I'd want to change is conventional medicine. I think it's caused a lot of ill in this world. And again, I don't think it's the people that are low on the ground, like any institution. I mean, there's first to third degree Masons who have no idea what higher level Masonry is doing. The same with some of the priests that are in Catholic churches. None of them know exactly the nature of the Jesuit beast. So it's the same. Yeah, with conventional medicine, I can't blame everything, but I could tell you at the very top and how it was designed by the Rockefellers, their petrochemical drugs that they first started out with, like acetaminophen, and the funding Flexner report and who could become doctors and who cannot. All of that, it was corrupted from the very beginning. And again, I've met great doctors that even practice conventional medicine that really do care about their patients. I met a lot of them too that really bought into the nature of the beast and the misinformation they were taught in medical school.
You got to make that boat payment.
Yep. And so it's with everything. You get the good and the bad. And I do think that, the medical establishment as a whole has, everybody loves to talk about the military industrial complex and how many people have died on account of them. How many people have died because of the medical establishment complex? Mm-hmm. I'd say it's almost equal.
It's funny when you just start talking to people, you end up finding, at least in my life, I've known a lot of people who have been injured or killed in hospitals through mess ups, reactions, wrong drugs, mistakes, things left inside. It's insanity when you imagine that it's such a common thing for such a level of ill care among a populace, when that should be the number one thing that we do, is caring for each other, not turning it into how much money I can get and coming in the middle of the night and waking you up and forcing you to sign papers when you're not cognitively possible, just so we can make sure that we don't pay everything.
I mean, imagine if I was head of I was a surgeon general, or not even me, Jack Cruz, Jason Horlak, Grace Liu, Isabella Wentz, not just me, but imagine what could be done in the state of our healthcare and the people that can be. I mean, you're absolutely right. Why disrupt someone's circadian rhythm by trying to get them to sign insurance forms in the middle of the night? That's hindering their recovery time, because you actually recover. A lot of human growth hormones released when we sleep. Our body's recovering when we rest. And to interrupt that, it's just, if anybody takes anything from this entire podcast, this is the most important thing I'm about to tell you right here. If you have a doctor who prescribes medicine, unless it's an emergency situation, and they do not, you can ask them this. If they want to give you a medicine, you ask them, have you read the drug insert for said medication? If they've said they do not, or they've never read the drug insert, you need to find another doctor. Because once you start reading those drug inserts and you start reading there are medicines that I do believe, I'm not completely 100%, naturopathic, homeopathic. I do think medicine does have a purpose. But for example, for Cipro, there are many issues that it can cause for taking fluoroquinolone antibiotics, and I've read about it on Fix Your Gut with mitochondrial issues. People becoming psychotic after taking Levaquin. People getting tendon ruptures. People start having heart issues and stuff. It's in the drug insert. And if doctors knew that, they wouldn't be prescribing them like candy. They're supposed to be, vancomycin, because we live in such an antibiotic resistant world now. It used to be a drug of last resort, labeled as a drug of last resort, meaning you would not use this unless all possible, because vancomycin it causes a lot of issues with the kidneys. But yet they give it like it's candy now. So it just blows my mind the way medicine is, that many of your doctors will prescribe medication, but they've never read the drug inserts that come with the medication. They've maybe just read short clips, an American manual, or short clips on their computer, but no more than that. They'll just go by the information that the drug rep has given them. You know what I mean? That was crazy.
Oh, yeah. It's insanity what goes on in that realm. But anytime you start introducing commercials and advertisement, then you kind of know where it's going anyway. It's all about the money. The patients are just there not to cure, because if you cure them, well, there goes your business.
And I'm not going to say that natural medicine or homeopathic medicine is not guilty of this either. But we should hold ourselves to a higher standard.
Well, the sad thing is, one side, which is general big pharma, big medicine hospital, says conventional only. Natural stuff, not so much. We'll just base our patents on it and sell you this. Meanwhile, naturopathy, more often than not, is, hey, you break a bone, your appendix rupture. Hospital's probably a good place to go. There's some benefit to it, but do we want to put you on high-strength antibiotics for 3 months afterwards? Well, that's a different question.
Yeah, wholeheartedly, if I get hit by a car, it's a trauma-based situation, I'm going to want to go to a hospital, and I want them to save my life. That's the only thing, is you always see conventional medicine people being like, well, if you believe in naturopathic medicine so much, then why would you ever come into a hospital? And everything. That's the biggest thing that conventional medicine does not do, and even naturopathic medicine doesn't do to some degree, is you have to weigh everything on a benefit versus risk scale and do less harm. And conventional medicine is not great at that at all.
No, it's sad. I know the last time we were in the hospital with Angie, it was terrifying to me because aside from the circadian rhythm, she was on a diabetic diet, and it was all carbs and all sugar and pancakes with like syrup. The mouthwash had parabens in it. There was no natural butter. It was all chemicals and creams. And I'm like, well, this is a terrible diet that's going to feed disease. You're giving a known cancer-causing compound inside of the mouthwash. This is a hospital.
Parabens are also endocrine disruptors too.
Yep. It terrified me, because at that point I realized that these are things that I know that the medical establishment should know. And if they don't know, that's terrifying on one level. Or if they do know, then what are they doing feeding you poor food, breaking your sleep up, and giving you things that make you sick when you're already sick?
I think at the highest levels, they probably know to some degree. But at the lowest levels, your average nurse or doctor, actually most nurses are more informed than most doctors in a lot of cases. At least from what I've seen from my own family being, being with conventional medicine too as well. But yeah, most doctors and nurses, they brought the propaganda. And I know some people say I should be very hard on them, but they're humans too.
Yeah, we all make mistakes. You can't behold somebody to the lies that they've been told.
Yeah, like I'm more angry at the Sackler family for, my father who beat drug addiction actually went back on drug addiction because of OxyContin. Because he had hepatitis C, his liver was failing. They gave it to him for pain, saying that he would not become addicted to it. And he did. And it led to the downfall of his health. Now, do I blame the Purdue pharmaceutical drug reps who possibly did not know? No. If they did know, then yeah. Do I blame Arthur Sackler and the Sackler family?
Hell yeah.
But, it is what it is, and a lot of people, Sacklers have made a lot of money, and Purdue Pharmaceuticals made a lot of money on the backs of many, many Americans.
What is the most courageous thing you have ever done or seen in your life?
My son Abel, how out of all the adversity that he went through all the tests, through all the medical procedures, how he fought to the bitter end, and he always did it smiling and bringing hope. And I'll never be able to match that courage. Not even if I even try, I'll never be able to match that. And even with my own health issues of having silent reflux and being sick as a kid with asthma and allergies and almost dying and being, born 3 months premature. And I've had a lot of health issues throughout my whole entire life. I thought I was tough. No. He was more tough than anybody I've ever known. And I think any more than anybody I ever will know. And it was a spirit. It touched so many people.
That's awesome, dude.
He changed so many lives. I mean, through me being able to coach people and the lives I've touched of the nurses that took care of him, the people that he met when he was alive. And I wish I had that courage. I fight for that courage. I mean, my dad took care of me when he was sick. He was one of the first patients in the United States that took ribavirin for hepatitis C. And I remember being up with him at night, him vomiting for 6 or 7 hours straight, and still having faith in God and still getting up in the morning and going to work. And I wish I had that. I wish I had that. I strive for that. And it's that courage. It's just, you don't see it very much anymore. No, but then again, there are a lot of people that I've met who they're on their health issues, especially children. Children, man, they get the short stick in life. You have a child who's got cancer, and they just fight it with such courage. And I'm not saying that they don't get scared. I'm not saying that Abel never got scared. I can see the fear in his eyes sometimes. But they have so much trust and so much hope in the world, and sometimes it always doesn't go the way that it's supposed to go. Sometimes they get a bad lot in life. But it's that courage that they have. It's different than any courage. I don't know if the world just bleeds it out of us as adults. I don't know.
That would make sense. It's something that, kids can be born with and they lose. How do you lose it? What is, what changes that and gives you the fear?
I don't know. I wish I had the answer to that. And some adults don't have that fear. And I like to say that, the best of days that I don't have that fear. That I'll do the right thing. That I'll be strong. But, it's just, it's the fight. It's the fight, and I find that very courageous, the fight that people have to try to get better, to try to live, the fight that people, do when they try to get the truth out, or when they try to, when you hear about altruistic events of people self-sacrificing themselves to save other people, even if it's in vain, they at least tried, and I'd hope to at least think one day that if I'm ever put in a situation like that I make the right decision. I'm human. We're all human, but it's just having that courage to go against adversity no matter what.
What rule do you have for yourself that you never break, and why do you think that is?
That's a good question. No matter how much I think I know, there is so much in this world that I have yet to learn. No matter how much I think I've gotten down to the bottom of things, or I think I've gotten something locked up, or this is it, this is it. This is it. There's only very few objective truths in life. There's very few things that people can, and it's even that is subjective to some degree. But I do think there are I do think there is logos. I do think there are objective truths. Now, what those objective truths are debatable. I do think that that God exists and that Yeshua died on the cross and was resurrected and stuff, and I think that's an objective truth. But for everybody else, it could be different. But again, for me, it's still trying to uncover how deep this rabbit hole goes. Now, is there a possibility that we live on a flat Earth? Yeah, I'm not about 99.9% sure the Earth's round, but what do I know? Is there a possibility that reptilian humanoids are real and aliens and cloning centers and whatever else your little mind could dream up? I don't know. But I'm going to still try to get down to the bottom of it. I'm never going to give up, because when I think that I have everything wrapped up, I learned that I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like that with Trump. I thought, the alliance was real and the deep state's getting theirs. And even though 2 years prior, if let's say 2014, if you would have asked me if I was ever going to vote again, I would say, no, it's all rigged. If you're going to ask me if any president has ever been a part of it, or any president, whatever, is all a part of the New World Order or the World Order, and any president afterwards going to be a part of the World Order, I would have said yes. And I actually said at one time that the next president was going to be the last president that was going to milk the golden calf of the economy of the United States of America. Look what Trump's doing.
Yep.
It's all a bubble, but that's what's happening. And boy, it was 2014 right, and 2016 John was wrong as hell. Because 2016 John got lazy and thought that he knew everything. Instead of searching for the truth, let everybody else tell him the truth. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm done. I won't do it. So I'm going to keep searching.
Phenomenal. Well, John, that was the first 13 questions.
I think it did good. I think it was a good round. It was.
I think it was great.
I hope people out there learn stuff. I'm ready for the bonus questions, though.
All right. Well, before we jump into those, because we're going to be leaving our regular listeners, I want to let everybody know that if you'd like to subscribe to the podcast or become a member, you can go to 13questionspodcast.com. You get access to the premium members feed and the website. You also get $200 in communication writing courses by TJ Walker. Really cool information. I think it's 16 something hours of courses in there. You also get prompted journaling exercises emailed to you weekly if you'd like to sign up for those. You also have the community forums and, of course, the bonus questions, which are coming up right now. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Adam, as always. I love 13 Questions and the Grammarica boys. You guys are like family to me. And definitely join. It's definitely well worth it. In our modern age, we do need the truth, and there's not a lot of it out there.
That's true. Wisdom is valuable. All right, John, you ready?
Let's do it.
Question number 1. What would you tell your teenage self?
Don't trust the government. Oh, man, I wish I would have known that. Oh, I wish. I mean, I could say much. I could go on. I could tell myself more things. But I've always wondered if I've told myself the pitfalls that I've had, like don't take ACE inhibitor, which will lead me to get silent reflux. Take better care of your health, the knowledge that I have now. Eat better. And then again, if I did all that, what I have.
I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo,
Why
what?
is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. ask yourself this question: why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians, and use labels? Now that's racism.
I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo,
Why is
why?
there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. The night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why. And why don't we turn from all the hate? And why don't we learn from all mistakes? Why do I keep on wrecking these fat beats? And teachers don't make more than professional athletes? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why?
I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't wanna Hawaii.
Why?
I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why? I don't wanna Hawaii. I don't wanna Hawaii. Yo, why?
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.